The marble floors gleamed under my worn sneakers, each squeak echoing through the cavernous penthouse like an accusation. I pressed my palm against the cool surface of the kitchen island, steadying myself as exhaustion pulled at my bones. 3 jobs. 3 different worlds I moved through like a ghost, invisible until someone needed their trash taken out or their floors scrubbed clean. This job, paid better than the others combined. The penthouse occupied the entire top floor of the building, floor-to-ceiling windows offering a view of the city that made my stomach drop every time I looked. I didn't belong in places like this. The art on the walls probably cost more than I'd earn in a lifetime. The furniture was the kind you were afraid to touch, all sharp angles and expensive leather that smelled like wealth and danger. I'd been cleaning here for 2 weeks, and I still hadn't met the owner. The agency had been explicit: arrive at 6 in the morning, leave by noon, never deviate from the schedule, don't touch anything personal, don't open closed doors, don't ask questions. The pay was deposited directly into my account every Friday. More money than I'd ever seen for honest work. Too good to be true, my mother would have said. But I needed it. Needed it more than air. I moved through the rooms methodically, the way I'd been taught. Dust the surfaces, vacuum the carpets. Change the sheets on the massive bed that looked like it had never been slept in. Everything pristine, everything perfect, everything cold. The bathroom alone was larger than the studio apartment I shared with 2 other girls. Black marble, gold fixtures, a shower with so many jets it looked like something from a spaceship. I cleaned it carefully, my reflection fragmenting in the spotless mirrors, dark circles under my eyes, hair pulled back in a messy bun, uniform hanging loose on my frame. When had I last eaten a real meal? I was spraying the mirrors when I felt it, that prickling sensation at the base of my neck, the awareness that comes from being watched. I froze, my breath catching. The penthouse was supposed to be empty. It was always empty. I turned slowly, my heart hammering against my ribs. But the doorway behind me revealed nothing but the hallway stretching into shadow. "You're being paranoid," I whispered to myself, but my hand shook as I finished cleaning. The feeling followed me through the rest of the morning. In the study, surrounded by leather-bound books and a desk that looked like it commanded empires. In the living room, where a single glass sat on the coffee table, bourbon from the smell, the ice long since melted. Someone had been here recently. I was gathering my supplies ready to leave when I noticed the door at the end of the hall, the one I'd been told never to open. It was slightly ajar. My rational mind screamed at me to leave, to grab my bag and get out. But curiosity, that dangerous, desperate curiosity that came from a life of always being on the outside looking in, made me move forward. The door opened silently on well-oiled hinges. The room was an office, darker than the others, the curtains drawn. But it was what lined the walls that made my blood turn to ice. Screens, dozens of them, covering every inch of the space in a mosaic of surveillance, and every single one showed the penthouse, the kitchen, the living room, the bedroom, the bathroom, angles I'd never noticed, cameras I'd never seen. I watched myself on the screens, recorded footage playing on a loop, cleaning, moving through rooms. My face caught in high definition as I'd stood in front of the bathroom mirror that morning, touching the dark circles under my eyes with a sadness I thought no one else could see. My stomach lurched. "Jesus Christ," I breathed, stepping back. That's when I heard it. The soft ding of the private elevator, the one that opened directly into the penthouse. Someone was here. Panic flooded through me, sharp and chemical. I ran from the office, trying to close the door silently, but my hands were shaking too hard. It clicked shut, just as footsteps echoed across the marble. Heavy, measured, male. I pressed myself against the wall, my heart threatening to break through my ribs. I shouldn't be here. I was supposed to be gone by noon. It was 11:47. "Sir, the reports from the Eastern District..." "Not now." The voice cut through the air like a blade. Deep, accented, the kind of voice that made people obey without question. I held my breath. More footsteps. Multiple people. I could hear them moving through the space. The murmur of conversation too low to make out words. My muscles screamed at me to stay still, to become part of the wall, invisible like I'd learned to be my whole life. Leave the files on my desk, everyone out. The footsteps retreated. The elevator dinged again. Silence. I counted to 60, then to 60 again. My legs were cramping, my body protesting the unnatural stillness. Slowly, carefully, I peeled myself away from the wall and moved toward the hallway that led to the service entrance. I'd almost made it when he appeared. He stepped out of the study like he'd materialized from shadow itself, and the sight of him struck me with physical force. Young. Younger than I'd expected. Maybe early 30s, with dark hair pushed back from a face that belonged on magazine covers, all sharp angles and dangerous beauty. He wore a black suit that probably cost more than my yearly rent, the jacket open over a white shirt that made his olive skin glow. But it was his eyes that froze me in place. Dark, fathomless, ancient in a young face, the eyes of someone who'd seen things that would break most people. He looked at me, and I felt stripped bare, exposed, like he could see every secret I'd ever kept, every fear that woke me at 3 a.m, every desperate prayer I'd whispered into the dark. You're still here. Not a question. An observation. My mouth opened, but no sound came out. He moved closer, and I noticed details I'd missed in my panic. The way he carried himself, loose and relaxed, but with a coiled readiness that suggested violence was always an option. The expensive watch on his wrist. The faint scar that cut through his left eyebrow. The way everyone else had left immediately when he'd commanded it. I'm sorry, I finally managed. I was just finishing. I'll go... What's your name? The question stopped me mid-turn. I looked back at him, confused. It should be in the agency files. I'm asking you. The weight in those 3 words, the expectation of obedience. Emma, I whispered. Emma Santos. He studied me with an intensity that made my skin burn. You've been cleaning my home for 2 weeks, Emma Santos. Yes, sir. Something flickered in his eyes at the sir. Dark, pleased. You're very thorough. He moved to the kitchen island, his movements liquid and precise. You reorganized my bookshelf by subject matter instead of size. You leave the bedroom curtains open because you notice the morning light hits the east wall. You water the plants in the study even though they're plastic. My blood turned cold. He'd been watching. Of course he'd been watching. You also, he continued, reaching for a glass from the cabinet, sing when you think no one can hear you. Humiliation burned through me, hot and acidic. I didn't mean... Don't apologize. He poured himself bourbon, the liquid amber in the afternoon light. You have a beautiful voice, wasted on cleaning houses. The compliment felt like a trap. Everything about this moment felt like a trap. I should really go, I said, backing toward the hallway. I'm sorry for staying past my time. Do you know who I am? The question hung in the air between us. I should have said no. Should have played dumb. But something in his gaze told me he'd know if I lied. No, I said carefully. The agency doesn't tell us anything about the clients. A slight smile curved his lips. It didn't reach his eyes. Smart policy. He took a sip of his drink, watching me over the rim. My name is Dante Marchetti. Does that mean anything to you? My mind raced. Marchetti. The name sounded familiar, like something I'd heard whispered in the kind of places where people spoke in hushed tones. Where? Then it hit me. The news. That story about the organized crime families in the city, the investigation that had suddenly gone quiet. Marchetti. The room tilted. I see you've made the connection. He set his glass down with a soft click. Now you understand why the pay is so generous. Why the rules are so strict. Why you've never seen me until now. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Everything in me screamed to run, but my legs wouldn't obey. I'm not going to hurt you, Emma. His voice had softened, taken on an almost gentle quality that was somehow more terrifying than anger would have been. But we need to have a conversation about what you saw, about what happens next. I didn't see anything, I said quickly. Too quickly. I swear, I just clean, I don't... The office. 2 words. Quiet, devastating. The door was open. You went inside. My vision blurred at the edges. What could I say? What excuse could possibly work? He moved closer, and I stumbled backward until the wall stopped me. He didn't touch me, but I could feel the heat of him, smell the expensive cologne mixed with something darker, gunpowder maybe, or blood. Do you know what I do to people who see things they shouldn't? He asked softly. Every instinct I had told me not to answer, not to engage, to make myself small and hope he lost interest. But his eyes demanded honesty. No, I whispered. Neither do I, he said. And the confession shocked me into looking up at him. Because no one's ever survived long enough for me to decide. The words should have terrified me. Should have sent me running. Instead, I saw something flicker in his expression. Something that looked almost like conflict. Please, I heard myself say. I need this job. I won't tell anyone. I swear on my life I won't. You have family? The question came out of nowhere. What? Family. People who depend on you. His gaze bore into mine. Answer me. My mother, I said, tears burning behind my eyes. She's sick. The medical bills. That's why I work 3 jobs. That's why I need... I cut myself off, but it was too late. His expression shifted. Something dark and possessive moving behind his eyes. 3 jobs, he repeated. When do you sleep, Emma Santos? That's none of your... When do you sleep? The command in his voice made me answer without thinking. 4 hours, maybe 5 on good nights. He stared at me for a long moment. Then he pulled out his phone, pressed a button, and spoke in rapid Italian. I caught only fragments, my name, an address, something about security. When he finished, he looked at me again. You no longer work for the agency, he said calmly. As of now, you work for me. You'll clean this penthouse and only this penthouse. Your salary will be triple what you were making at all 3 jobs combined. Your mother's medical bills will be paid in full by the end of the week. I couldn't process the words. What? You wanted to keep your job. He stepped back, giving me space to breathe. Now you have it. But understand this. You belong to me now. You don't leave this building without my permission. You don't speak to anyone about what you've seen. You don't question my rules. You can't just... I can. Simple. Final. And I have. Your things will be moved to a room on the floor below this one by tonight. You'll find everything you need already there. Terror and confusion warred inside me. Why are you doing this? He moved to the window, looking out at the city far below. When he spoke again, his voice was different. Quieter. Almost vulnerable. Because I've been watching you for 2 weeks, Emma. Watching you care for things that aren't yours. Watching you sing to plastic plants and leave notes for a man you've never met. Watching you work yourself to exhaustion for someone you love. He turned back to me, and the look in his eyes made my heart stop. And I've decided I'm not letting you leave. The room on the floor below wasn't a room. It was a prison dressed in silk and expensive furniture. I stood in the doorway, my few belongings already arranged on surfaces I hadn't touched. Someone had unpacked for me, gone through my things. The violation of it made my skin crawl. But what choice did I have? Dante Marchetti had made it clear. This wasn't a request. It was ownership. The space was larger than any apartment I'd ever lived in. A king-sized bed dominated the center, covered in linens that probably cost more than my mother's monthly medication. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered the same vertiginous view of the city, making me feel like I was suspended in air. A door led to a bathroom with heated floors and a tub deep enough to drown in. Everything I could possibly need, everything except freedom. I walked to the window, pressing my forehead against the cool glass. Below, people moved like ants, free to go wherever they wanted, to live their insignificant, beautiful lives without someone watching their every move. My phone buzzed. I pulled it from my pocket with shaking hands. Mom. The hospital called. They said all my bills have been cleared. Emma, what did you do? Tears blurred my vision. He'd already done it. Within hours of his decree, my mother's crushing debt had simply vanished. Me. Don't worry about it. Everything's fine. I got a better job. Mom, are you safe? The question sat on my screen, unanswered. Was I safe? I was trapped 40 floors above the ground with a man who commanded criminal empires, a man who'd installed cameras throughout his home to watch me without my knowledge, a man whose eyes held the kind of darkness that swallowed light, me. Yes, I love you. I couldn't tell her the truth, couldn't burden her with this. A knock on the door made me jump. Come in, I called, hating how small my voice sounded. A woman entered, 50s, severe expression, dressed in black like she was attending a funeral. She carried a garment bag and a tablet. Miss Santos, I'm Mrs. Chen, Mr. Marchetti's household manager. Her accent was crisp, British. Her eyes assessed me with clinical efficiency. We need to discuss your new position. New position, as if I'd accepted a job at a bank instead of being imprisoned by a mafia boss. I already know how to clean, I said, trying to find some shred of defiance. Her lips twitched, almost a smile. Mr. Marchetti has specific requirements. You'll maintain the penthouse as before, but now you'll also prepare his meals when he's in residence. You'll manage his personal schedule. You'll accompany him to certain events. Accompany him? The words came out sharp. I'm a maid, not an escort? Mrs. Chen's eyebrow arched. No, you're not. But Mr. Marchetti moves in circles where appearances matter. He'll need someone by his side who appears appropriate. She opened the garment bag, revealing a dress that made my breath catch. Deep emerald silk that shimmered in the light, cut in a way that suggested elegance rather than provocation. This is for tomorrow evening. There's a charity gala at the Metropolitan Museum. You'll attend with Mr. Marchetti. I don't know how to... I've never been to anything like that. You'll learn. She set the dress on the bed with careful precision. A stylist will arrive at 3 to prepare you. Don't eat anything heavy. The dress is tailored to your exact measurements. Of course it was. He'd been watching me long enough to know every curve, every angle of my body. What if I refuse? Mrs. Chen looked at me for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice had softened slightly. Then Mr. Marchetti will be disappointed. And trust me, Miss Santos, you don't want to disappoint him. She left, and I was alone with the dress and the weight of my new reality. The next day crawled by with agonizing slowness. I cleaned the penthouse as instructed, but everything felt different now. Every surface I touched felt like it was touching me back. Every mirror reflected not just my image, but the knowledge that he was watching. Always watching. I found myself performing for the cameras, moving with more grace, taking extra care with tasks I used to rush through, singing softly as I worked, remembering his words. You have a beautiful voice, hating myself for wanting to please him. At 3 o'clock exactly, the elevator dinged. A team of people emerged like an invasion force. Hairstylists, makeup artists, a woman with a rolling rack of shoes. They descended on me with professional efficiency, transforming me from invisible maid to something else entirely. The woman doing my hair spoke in rapid French to her assistant. The makeup artist studied my face like it was a canvas requiring restoration. They worked in synchronized silence, occasionally tilting my chin or turning my head, never asking what I wanted. I wasn't a person to them. I was a project. 2 hours later, I stared at my reflection and didn't recognize myself. The dress fit like it had been painted on, the emerald silk making my skin glow. My dark hair had been swept into an elegant updo, a few tendrils left loose to frame my face. The makeup was subtle, but transformative. My eyes looked larger, my cheekbones more pronounced, my lips fuller. I looked like I belonged in Dante Marchetti's world. The thought made me sick. Mr. Marchetti is waiting in the penthouse, Mrs. Chen announced, appearing in the doorway. Remember, smile when appropriate, speak when spoken to, and stay by his side at all times. I'm not a child, I snapped. Her expression didn't change. No, you're something far more valuable to him. Act accordingly. The elevator ride to the penthouse felt like ascending to my execution. My heart hammered against my ribs, the heels they'd given me clicking against the floor, with each nervous shift of weight. The doors opened. Dante stood by the windows, his back to me, silhouetted against the dying light. He wore a tuxedo that made him look like danger wrapped in civilization. all clean lines and barely contained power. He turned, and the look in his eyes when he saw me made my breath catch. Emma. My name on his lips sounded like a prayer, or a curse. He crossed the space between us in 3 strides, moving with that predatory grace that made every nerve in my body sing warning. He stopped close enough that I could smell his cologne, something dark and expensive that made my head swim. You look. He reached out, his fingers hovering near my face but not quite touching. Perfect. I look like someone I'm not, I said, hating how my voice shook. No. His hand dropped. You look like who you've always been. I just gave you the clothes to match. Before I could respond, he offered his arm. We need to leave. The car is waiting. I stared at his arm like it was a snake. And if I don't go, then I'll carry you. Simple. Matter of fact. But I'd rather you walked. It'll be less embarrassing for both of us. I took his arm because I had no choice. Because my mother's health depended on his money. Because 40 floors was a long way to fall. The elevator descended, and I felt like I was sinking into deep water. The garage was vast and shadowy, filled with cars that cost more than houses. A black Mercedes waited near the elevator, gleaming under harsh lights. 2 men in dark suits flanked it, massive, expressionless, the kind of men whose job description included violence. One opened the back door. Dante guided me inside with a hand at the small of my back, his touch burning through the silk. The interior smelled like leather and danger. Dante slid in beside me, too close, his thigh pressing against mine. The door closed with a solid thunk that sounded like a cell locking. We pulled out of the garage and the city swallowed us. You're frightened, Dante observed, his voice quiet in the intimate space. You kidnapped me. I think that's a reasonable response. A slight smile curved his lips. I prefer to think of it as aggressive employment. Most employers don't install cameras to watch their staff. The smile vanished. He turned to face me fully, and the intensity in his gaze made me press back against the seat. Those cameras weren't for security, Emma. They were for you. My breath caught. What? The first day you came to clean, I happened to be home, working in my office. I saw you on the monitors, this small exhausted girl who sang to plants and left notes thanking me for the honor of cleaning my toilet. His laugh was bitter. Do you know what it's like to watch someone find joy in the smallest things? To see genuine kindness in a world that's forgotten what that means, so you decided to trap me? I decided to keep you. His hand moved to my face, fingers tracing my cheekbone with devastating gentleness, because in 2 weeks, you became the only real thing in my life. Everything else is blood and business and bullshit. But you were real. I wanted to jerk away from his touch. Wanted to scream that he was insane, that you don't own people, that this was wrong on every conceivable level. But his fingers were so gentle, and the look in his eyes was so desperately human. I'm not a pet, I whispered. No. His thumb brushed across my lower lip, and I shivered despite myself. You're so much more than that. The car glided through traffic, the city lights painting shadows across his face. We rode in tense silence until we pulled up in front of the museum, all marble steps and classical architecture, lit up like a temple. Remember, Dante said as the door opened, you stay by my side. You don't wander off. You don't speak to anyone without my permission. You mean you don't trust me not to scream for help? His eyes darkened. I mean I don't trust anyone else not to hurt you. My world is full of people who'd use you to get to me. Stay close, Emma. I won't ask again. He stepped out, and cameras flashed like lightning. I heard voices calling his name, saw the crowd that had gathered behind velvet ropes. Dante Marchetti arriving at a charity gala was apparently news. He turned back, offering his hand. I took it because the alternative was staying in the car. Because part of me, a part I hated, was curious about his world. The moment my heel touched the pavement, the cameras went insane. Flashes exploded around us, voices shouting questions I couldn't parse. Dante's arm went around my waist, pulling me against his side with possessive firmness. Smile, he murmured against my ear. Let them think you want to be here. So I smiled, and I hated that it felt almost natural. We climbed the steps together, moving through a sea of wealth and power. People parted for Dante like he was royalty, or a shark. The looks we received ranged from curious to calculating to openly hostile. A woman in a dress that cost more than my life stepped forward, her smile sharp. Dante. How unexpected to see you here, Victoria. His tone could have frozen fire. Still pretending your husband's money makes you interesting? Her smile never wavered, but her eyes promised murder. And who is this? Mine, Dante said simply, and the possessiveness in that single word made my knees weak. We moved past her, into the museum's grand hall. Chandeliers dripped crystal light over a crowd that represented more money than I could comprehend. Waiters circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. A string quartet played something classical and melancholy. I felt like I'd stumbled into a different universe. Stay here, Dante commanded, positioning me near a pillar. I need to speak with someone. Don't move. He disappeared into the crowd, and I was alone among wolves in designer clothing. That's when I saw him, a man watching me from across the room. Young, handsome in a cruel way, with ice blue eyes that stripped me bare. He smiled, slow and predatory, and started walking toward me. Every instinct I had screamed danger. I looked for Dante, but he'd vanished into the crowd. The man was getting closer, moving with purpose, and I had nowhere to run. He stopped in front of me, so close I could smell whiskey on his breath. So you're Dante's new toy, he said, his accent thick with something Eastern European. He always did have excellent taste. I don't know what you're talking about, don't you? His smile widened. Tell me, does he know what you did? What you really are? My blood turned to ice. What? Everyone has secrets, Piccola. He reached out, tucking a loose strand of hair behind my ear. The touch made my skin crawl. I wonder what Dante would do if he knew yours. Before I could respond, a hand clamped onto the man's wrist with crushing force. Dante had returned, and the look on his face promised death. The air turned glacial. Dante's grip on the man's wrist tightened until I heard bone creak. His face remained perfectly calm, that terrifying calm that preceded hurricanes. But his eyes burned with something feral and uncontained. Alexei? Dante's voice was soft, deadly. Did I give you permission to touch what's mine? The man, Alexei, tried to pull away, but Dante held him effortlessly. I was just introducing myself. You were marking your grave. Dante twisted the wrist slightly, and Alexei's face went white. You have 3 seconds to walk away. After that, I stop being civilized. Alexei jerked free, stumbling backward. He shot me a look filled with poisonous promise before disappearing into the crowd. The people nearby had witnessed everything, but pretended they'd seen nothing, their conversations continuing without pause. This was normal in Dante's world. Violence wrapped in tuxedos. Dante turned to me, and the fury in his expression morphed into something else. Concern, possessiveness. An emotion I couldn't name but felt in my bones. Did he hurt you? His hands moved to my shoulders, his touch gentle despite the violence I'd just witnessed. No. He said something strange. Dante's jaw tightened. What did he say? The question Alexei had asked echoed in my mind. Does he know what you did? What you really are? But I had no secrets. I was nobody. An exhausted girl who cleaned houses and sang to plastic plants. Nothing important. I lied, not understanding why I was protecting a stranger who'd threatened me. Dante studied my face with that unnerving intensity, like he could read my thoughts. You're lying. But we'll discuss it later. Right now, we're leaving. We just got here. I don't care. His hand found the small of my back again, guiding me toward the exit with barely restrained urgency. Alexei Volkov doesn't make social calls. His presence here means something, and I'm not risking you to find out what. We moved through the crowd quickly, Dante's body positioned between me and everyone else like a human shield. The evening air hit me as we emerged onto the steps, cool and welcome after the suffocating atmosphere inside. The Mercedes materialized as if summoned, and Dante practically pushed me inside before sliding in beside me. The door hadn't even closed before he was on his phone, speaking in rapid Italian that sounded like orders being issued. The car pulled away from the curb with urgent speed. Who was he? I asked, my voice smaller than I wanted. Alexei Volkov runs the Russian operations in the Northern District. We have an understanding. He stays in his territory, I stay in mine. Dante's expression darkened. Him approaching you breaks that understanding. Maybe he was just being friendly. Men like Alexei are never just friendly. He turned to me, and the possessiveness in his eyes made my breath catch. He was sending a message, letting me know he can get to you, that you're vulnerable. I am vulnerable, I said quietly. You made sure of that when you trapped me in your penthouse. Something flickered in his expression, almost like regret. I know what you think of me, Emma. You think I'm a monster who collects pretty things and locks them away. His hand moved to my face, fingers tracing the curve of my jaw. Maybe you're right, but at least in my cage, you're safe. Out there. He gestured toward the city beyond the tinted windows. You're prey. And with you, I'm what? A possession. With me, you're mine. There's a difference. The car wound through streets I didn't recognize, moving away from the direction of the penthouse. My pulse quickened. Where are we going? Somewhere secure. Alexei's appearance means the old agreements are breaking down. Until I know what he's planning, you don't go back to the penthouse. Panic fluttered in my chest. My mother is already being moved to a private facility with round-the-clock security. He said it so casually, like relocating someone's entire life was nothing. She'll be safer there, better care than any hospital could provide. You can't just... I can. I did. Stop fighting me on this, Emma. His voice softened, but the command remained. I'm trying to protect you by controlling every aspect of my existence. Yes. The honesty of it stunned me into silence. We drove for another 20 minutes before pulling into an underground garage. Not the one beneath Dante's building. This one was smaller, more industrial. The car stopped beside a private elevator flanked by 2 armed guards who nodded at Dante with military precision. Where are we? I asked as we stepped into the elevator. A safe house, one of several I maintain throughout the city. The elevator began to rise. No one knows about this location except my most trusted people. The doors opened onto a loft that couldn't have been more different from the penthouse. Where that space was all cold marble and expensive art, this was warm. Exposed brick walls, hardwood floors, furniture that looked lived in rather than displayed. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed a view of the waterfront, dark water reflecting city lights. It felt like a home rather than a showpiece. There's food in the kitchen, clothes in the bedroom, Dante said, shrugging off his jacket and draping it over a chair. He rolled up his shirt sleeves, revealing forearms corded with muscle and marked with scars that told stories I probably didn't want to know. Make yourself comfortable. We'll be here for a few days. A few days? My voice rose. I can't just disappear for days. You already have. He moved to the windows, looking out at the water. As far as anyone knows, you're exactly where I want you to be. With me. The casual way he said it, like my life was just a variable in his equations. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to make him understand that I was a person, not a chess piece. Instead, I asked the question that had been burning in my mind since the museum. What did Alexei mean when he asked if you knew what I really am? Dante turned slowly, and the look in his eyes was dangerous. I was hoping you'd tell me. I don't know what he's talking about. I'm nobody. Just a girl who cleans houses. Nobody is just anything, Emma. He crossed the space between us, and I found myself backed against the brick wall. He braced his hands on either side of my head, caging me in. I've had you investigated, background checks, financial records, employment history. Everything came back exactly as you said. Exhausted girl working 3 jobs to pay her mother's medical bills. His face was so close I could see flecks of gold in his dark eyes. But Alexei doesn't waste words. If he said you have secrets, then something in your past connects to my world. His thumb brushed across my lower lip. So I'll ask you one more time. What aren't you telling me? My mind raced. What could possibly connect me to organized crime? My life was work and sleep and worry. There was nothing. Wait. A memory surfaced, hazy and half forgotten, 6 months ago. A man who'd come to our apartment looking for my roommate, Sarah. He'd been nervous, insistent, had left a package and begged Sarah to hold it for a few days. She'd refused, kicked him out. But what if she hadn't? What if that package had something to do with... There was a man, I said slowly. He came to my apartment months ago, looking for my roommate. He wanted her to hold something for him. She refused. Dante's eyes sharpened. What kind of package? I don't know. She threw him out before I could see. It was probably nothing. What was your roommate's name? Sarah Chen. But she moved out weeks ago. I haven't heard from her since. Something dark passed over Dante's face. He pulled out his phone, dialed, spoke in clipped Italian. I caught a name. Sarah Chen. Repeated several times with increasing urgency. He hung up and looked at me with an expression I couldn't read. Sarah Chen was found dead 3 days ago in the river. Execution style. The room tilted. What? The man who came to your apartment. Did you get a good look at him? Yes. Dark hair, scar on his cheek. He had an accent. Eastern European, I think. Shit. Dante dragged a hand through his hair, his composure cracking. He was one of Alexi's runners. If he approached Sarah, if he left something at your apartment... But she refused. She didn't take anything. Alexei doesn't know that. His hands gripped my shoulders. He thinks you have whatever his runner was trying to hide. That's why he approached you tonight. He was testing you, seeing if you knew what you had. But I don't have anything. It doesn't matter what you actually have, Emma. It matters what he thinks you have. Dante's grip tightened, and now he knows you're connected to me, which makes you valuable, a bargaining chip. Terror flooded through me. What does that mean? It means he'll try to take you, use you to get whatever his runner hid, or to leverage me into giving up territory. Dante pulled me against his chest, and I let him because I was shaking too hard to stand on my own. But I won't let that happen. You understand me? I will burn this entire city down before I let him touch you again. The vehemence in his voice should have scared me. Instead, it felt like the only solid thing in a world that had suddenly turned liquid and dangerous. Why? I whispered against his chest. Why do you care? You barely know me. His arms tightened around me. I've watched you for weeks, Emma. Watched you be kind when the world gave you every reason to be bitter. Watched you work until your hands bled because you loved someone enough to sacrifice yourself. Watched you find beauty in plastic plants and cleaning supplies. He pulled back enough to look at my face, his hands cradling it with devastating gentleness. You made me remember what it feels like to be human, to want something besides power and revenge and blood. His forehead pressed against mine. So yes, I barely know you, but I know enough to understand that if I let you go, I'll never find anything real again. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was insane. He was insane, possessive and controlling and dangerous in ways I couldn't fully comprehend. But when he looked at me like that, like I was water in a desert, I felt something shift inside me. I'm not yours to keep, I said. But the words had lost their conviction, then be mine to protect. His lips brushed against my forehead. Let me keep you safe. Let me give you a life where you don't work yourself to exhaustion. Let me... His phone buzzed. He pulled away, answering with a sharp, "What?" Whatever the person on the other end said made his expression turn murderous. When? A pause. How many? Another pause. Longer this time. Keep them there. I'm on my way. He hung up and looked at me, and I saw something in his eyes I hadn't seen before. Fear. What's wrong? Alexei made his move faster than I expected. He sent men to the penthouse. Dante was already moving, grabbing a jacket from the closet, checking something inside it that looked like a gun. They're looking for you. But I'm not there. They don't know that. Which means we have a small window before they figure out where you really are. He pulled on the jacket, then turned back to me. I need you to stay here. Don't answer the door. Don't go near the windows. Don't call anyone. Where are you going? To remind Alexei why people fear the Marchetti name. He crossed back to me, pulled me into a hard kiss that tasted like desperation and violence, and something that felt dangerously like goodbye. I'll be back before morning, and when I return, this ends. One way or another. He was gone before I could respond, the elevator doors closing on his retreating form. I stood alone in the safe house, 40 stories above a city that had suddenly become a battlefield, and realized that somewhere between the penthouse and this moment, I'd stopped wanting to escape. The hours crawled by like wounded animals. I paced the loft, my heels abandoned somewhere near the door, the emerald dress whispering against my legs with each agitated step. The city beyond the windows pulsed with light and life, oblivious to the war being waged in its shadows. Dante had been gone for 3 hours, then 4, then 5. I tried not to imagine what he was doing. Tried not to picture the violence those elegant hands were capable of inflicting. But my mind kept returning to the way he'd looked at Alexei, that cold, terrifying calm that preceded destruction. I will burn this entire city down before I let him touch you again. The words should have horrified me. Instead, they wrapped around my chest like armor. Around midnight, exhaustion finally dragged me to the bedroom. The space was sparse but comfortable, a large bed with dark sheets, a dresser, a single chair by the window. I found clothes in the closet, all in my size. Of course they were. Dante had planned for this contingency long before tonight. I changed into a soft t-shirt and sleep shorts, catching my reflection in the mirror. The makeup was smudged now, the elegant updo coming loose. I looked like what I was, a girl playing dress-up in a world where the costumes came with blood prices. But I didn't look frightened anymore. That realization stopped me cold. When had I stopped being terrified? When had the cage started feeling like sanctuary? I climbed into the bed, pulling the sheets up to my chin, and waited for sleep that wouldn't come. Every sound made me jump, the building settling, the distant wail of sirens, the wind against the windows. I kept reaching for my phone before remembering Dante had taken it, replacing it with a new one that had exactly 3 contacts: him, Mrs. Chen, and emergency services. Control. Always control. But also protection. Always protection. The two were so tangled in him I couldn't separate them anymore. I must have dozed eventually because I woke to the sound of the elevator. My eyes flew open, heart hammering. The bedroom door was partially open, allowing me a sliver view of the living area. Dante emerged from the elevator, and my breath caught. He looked like he'd walked through hell. His white shirt was torn and stained. Blood, I realized with sick certainty. His knuckles were split and raw. A cut above his eyebrow leaked crimson down the side of his face. But it was his eyes that truly scared me. Dark and empty, like he'd left part of his humanity somewhere out in the city. He moved to the kitchen, poured himself whiskey with shaking hands, and drank it in one long swallow. I should have stayed in bed, should have pretended to sleep. Instead, I found myself getting up, my feet carrying me toward him before my brain could intervene. He heard me approach and turned, his expression shifting from that terrible emptiness to something raw and vulnerable when he saw me. Emma. My name sounded broken in his mouth. You should be asleep. You're hurt. It's not my blood. He set the glass down carefully, like he didn't trust his hands. Most of it, anyway. The casual way he said it, like violence was weather, something that happened, unavoidable and unremarkable. I moved to him, reaching up to touch the cut above his eyebrow. He flinched, and I realized it was the first time I'd initiated contact, the first time I'd chosen to bridge the space between us. Let me clean that, I said softly. He stared at me for a long moment, something like wonder crossing his face, then he nodded. I found a first aid kit under the bathroom sink. Of course there was a first aid kit, because Dante planned for everything. I wet a cloth with warm water and returned to find him sitting on the couch, his head tilted back, eyes closed. He looked younger like this, almost vulnerable. I knelt between his legs, close enough to feel the heat radiating from his body. When I touched the cloth to his forehead, his eyes opened, and the intensity in them made my hands tremble. Tell me what happened, I whispered as I cleaned the blood away. Alexei had 12 men at the penthouse. I had 20 waiting. His voice was flat, emotionless. It wasn't a fair fight. Did you kill them? Some. The rest will wish I had by the time they heal. He caught my wrist gently, stilling my movements. Does that frighten you? Knowing what I'm capable of? I should have said yes, should have recoiled from the monster in front of me. Instead, I said, "You did it to protect me. That doesn't make it right." "No," I agreed, "but it makes it understandable." Something shifted in his expression. The emptiness receded, replaced by an emotion so intense it stole my breath. "You're going to ruin me," he said quietly. "You know that?" "I'm not trying to. You don't have to try. You just exist. And everything I've built, all the walls, all the rules I've lived by, they crumble." His free hand moved to my face, thumb brushing across my cheekbone. "I've killed men for looking at me wrong. I've destroyed families for disrespect. I've built an empire on fear and blood." He pulled me closer until I was pressed against the couch between his knees. "But you sing to plants and leave thank you notes and work yourself to exhaustion for love. And somehow that's more powerful than anything I've ever done." My heart thundered in my chest. "Dante, I'm not a good man, Emma. I won't pretend to be. But with you, I want to try." His forehead pressed against mine. "Stay with me. Not because you're trapped. Not because I'm paying your mother's bills. Stay because you choose to." The request hung in the air between us, fragile and devastating. I thought about the penthouse with its cameras and marble floors, about the way he'd twisted Alexi's wrist without mercy, about the blood on his shirt and the bodies he'd left behind tonight. But I also thought about the gentleness in his touch, the way he'd noticed that I left curtains open for morning light, the fierce protectiveness in his eyes when he'd pulled me close. "I don't know if I can trust you," I admitted. "Then let me earn it." His lips brushed against my forehead. "Give me time to prove I can be what you need. And what if you can't? Then you walk away, and I let you go." The lie was obvious in his voice. We both knew he'd never let me go, but the fact that he tried to offer it meant something. I pulled back enough to look at him properly. Blood still crusted in his hairline. His eyes were shadowed with exhaustion and violence. He was dangerous and broken and possessive in ways that should have sent me running. But when I looked at him, I didn't see a monster. I saw a man who'd forgotten how to be human until a girl who sang to plants reminded him. "I need you to promise me something," I said. "Anything. No more cameras. No more watching me without my knowledge. If I'm going to stay, I need privacy. I need trust." He studied my face for a long moment, then nodded. "Done. I'll have them removed tomorrow. And I want to see my mother. Regularly, not supervised visits. Real time with her. I'll arrange it. And..." I hesitated, knowing this was the biggest ask. "I want to leave the building sometimes. Not run away, just breathe. Walk through the city like a normal person." His jaw tightened. "With security. I can live with that." "Then we have an agreement." He stood, pulling me up with him. "But understand this, Emma. I'm still going to be possessive. I'm still going to want to keep you close. That's not something I can change. I know." And strangely, I did know. I understood him in a way I shouldn't have been able to. But there's a difference between possessive and controlling. Learn where that line is. A smile tugged at his lips, the first real smile I'd seen from him. "You're going to be trouble, aren't you? Probably." He laughed, and the sound transformed his face from dangerous to breathtaking. Then his expression sobered. "There's something else you need to know, about Alexei." The name sent ice through my veins. "What about him?" "Tonight was a warning shot. He backed off when he saw my response. But this isn't over." Dante's hands moved to my shoulders. "He still thinks you have whatever his runner hid. Until we find it, or prove it doesn't exist, you're a target. Then we find it." "We?" "You said I was yours to protect." I lifted my chin, channeling a courage I didn't entirely feel. "That means you're mine to help, so yes. We." The possessiveness that flared in his eyes should have scared me. Instead, it made me feel powerful. "Tomorrow," he said, "we go back to your old apartment, see if Sarah left anything behind. But tonight," he pulled me against his chest, wrapping his arms around me with careful desperation. Tonight I just need to hold you, to remember why I burned half the city. I let him hold me, my ear pressed against his heartbeat. Strong and steady despite everything. Tell me about the cameras, I said quietly. When did you start watching? The first day. His voice rumbled through his chest. You were cleaning the study and you found a photo on my desk, my mother, from when I was young. You straightened it so carefully, adjusted the angle so the light hit it better. Then you smiled at it, this small, sad smile, and whispered she was beautiful. I remembered that photo, a striking woman with dark hair and kind eyes. In that moment, I saw something I hadn't seen in years. Compassion without agenda, kindness without expecting reward. His arms tightened around me. I had the cameras installed that afternoon. I told myself it was for security. But really, I just wanted to see if that moment was real. If you were real. And you sang to plastic plants, Emma. You were the most real thing I'd ever encountered. We stood like that for a long time. Two broken people clinging to each other in the darkness. Outside, the city continued its oblivious dance. But in here, in this moment, the world had narrowed to just us. Come to bed, Dante said finally. You need sleep. I won't be able to sleep. Then let me hold you. He led me back to the bedroom, and we lay down together on top of the covers. He pulled me against his chest, one arm wrapped protectively around my waist. I could smell blood and gunpowder and expensive cologne, the scent of Dante's world. Emma? Thank you. For what? For not running when you had the chance. For cleaning my wounds. For giving me a reason to be better than what I am. I turned in his arms to face him. In the dim light from the windows, his features were softened, the dangerous edge temporarily dulled. I'm not your redemption, Dante. That's not fair to either of us, I know. He tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. But maybe you can be my reason. That's enough. I didn't know what to say to that, so I kissed him instead. It was gentle, tentative. A question rather than a demand. His lips were soft against mine, tasting of whiskey and violence and something sweeter. He responded carefully, like I was made of glass, his hand cradling the back of my head with devastating tenderness. When we pulled apart, his eyes were dark with something that looked like reverence. Sleep. He commanded softly. I'll keep watch. You need sleep too. I'll sleep when I know you're safe. His thumb traced circles on my hip. Rest, Emma. I've got you. And somehow, impossibly, I believed him. I closed my eyes and let the exhaustion take me, wrapped in the arms of a monster who'd decided to be human, just for me. Morning arrived with pale light filtering through the windows, painting the loft in shades of gold and shadow. I woke to find Dante still beside me, his arm heavy across my waist, his breathing deep and even. Sleep had softened the harsh lines of his face, making him look almost peaceful, almost normal. I studied him in the quiet dawn. The scar through his eyebrow, the sharp angle of his jaw, the dark lashes that rested against his cheeks. In sleep, he looked less like a crime lord and more like just a man, tired, human. Beautiful in a way that made my chest ache. His eyes opened suddenly, catching me watching. A slow smile curved his lips. See something you like? Heat flooded my face. I was just... Don't. He pulled me closer, nuzzling against my neck. Don't apologize for looking at me like that. I've waited weeks to see that expression on your face. What expression? Like maybe I'm not a monster after all. Before I could respond, his phone buzzed on the nightstand. The sound shattered the intimate moment like a gunshot. Dante's entire demeanor shifted, the softness vanishing, replaced by the cold efficiency I recognized from before. He answered in clipped Italian, his expression darkening with each passing second. When he hung up, he looked at me with grim determination. They found something at your apartment. We need to go, now. 30 minutes later, we pulled up outside the rundown building I'd called home for the past 2 years. It looked smaller than I remembered, dingier. The paint peeling, The front steps cracked and uneven. Had it always been this depressing? Or had a few days in Dante's world already changed my perspective? 2 of Dante's men flanked the entrance, their presence making the few residents on the street hurry past with averted eyes. Dante kept his hand at the small of my back as we climbed to the 3rd floor, his body positioned protectively between me and any potential threat. My apartment door hung open, revealing the chaos inside. Someone had torn the place apart. Couch cushions slashed open, their stuffing scattered like snow. Drawers upended, their contents strewn across the floor. The small kitchen ransacked, cabinets hanging from broken hinges. Jesus, I breathed. Alexei's men got here first, Dante said grimly. They were thorough. A man emerged from the bedroom, one of Dante's people, holding something wrapped in plastic. Found it in the air vent, boss. Exactly where you thought it'd be. Dante took the package, unwrapping it carefully. Inside was a small external hard drive, innocuous looking except for the Cyrillic characters scratched into its casing. What is it? I asked. Leverage. Dante's jaw tightened. Financial records, probably. Names and numbers that could destroy Alexei's entire operation. He looked at me. Something dark moving behind his eyes. Sarah must have taken it from the runner after all. Hidden it here without telling you. Guilt twisted in my stomach. She was killed because of this? She was killed because she got involved in something she didn't understand. Because someone in my world thought they could use her as a pawn. His hand found my face, forcing me to look at him. That's not your fault, Emma. None of this is your fault. But it felt like my fault. Sarah had been my roommate, my friend. And she died while I'd been obliviously cleaning penthouses and singing to plastic plants. What happens now? Dante's expression hardened into something ruthless and final. Now I end this, once and for all. The meeting was set for neutral ground. An abandoned warehouse on the waterfront that reeked of rust and old fish. Dante had wanted me to stay at the safe house, but I'd refused. This had started because of me, because of my connection to Sarah. I needed to see it through. He'd relented, but only after making me promise to stay in the car with 2 armed guards. I watched through tinted windows as Dante walked into the warehouse flanked by 6 of his men, the hard drive tucked inside his jacket. Minutes stretched into hours. Or maybe just minutes that felt like hours. Then the gunshot cracked through the air. My heart stopped. The guards tensed, hands moving to their weapons. I pressed against the window, trying to see anything through the warehouse's grimy windows. More gunshots. Shouting. The sound of something heavy hitting the ground. Stay in the car, one of the guards commanded, but I was already reaching for the door handle. Like hell I will. I ran before they could stop me, my feet pounding against cracked pavement. The warehouse door was ajar, and I slipped through into a space thick with shadows and the smell of gunpowder. Bodies littered the floor, Alexei's men, from the look of them. Blood pooled on concrete. My stomach heaved. But I forced myself to keep moving, following the sound of voices deeper into the warehouse. I found them in a circle of harsh light from a skylight above. Dante stood over Alexei, who was on his knees, blood streaming from his nose. The hard drive lay smashed on the floor between them. You broke the accord, Dante was saying, his voice cold and final. You came after what's mine. She's just a girl. Alexei spat blood onto the concrete. Nothing. A distraction. She's everything. Dante pressed his gun to Alexei's forehead. And that's why you lose. Dante, don't. My voice echoed through the space. Every head turned toward me. Dante's expression cycled through shock, fury, and something that looked like fear. Emma, get out of here. Now. No. I walked forward on shaking legs, past the bodies, past the blood, until I stood at the edge of their circle. Don't kill him. He tried to take you. He killed your friend. He deserves... I know what he deserves. I looked at Alexei's battered face, feeling nothing but a cold emptiness where hatred should have been. But if you kill him here, like this, it makes you the same as him. It makes everything you said last night, about wanting to be better, a lie. Dante stared at me, his gun hand trembling. Emma, please. I moved closer, reaching out to touch his arm. Please, let him live. Show everyone that Dante Marchetti is more than just violence and fear. Show them mercy. For a long, terrible moment, no one moved. The warehouse held its breath. Then Dante lowered the gun. Get him out of my sight, he commanded. and his men moved immediately, hauling Alexei to his feet. Exile. No territory, no operation, no protection. He has 24 hours to leave the city. After that, he's fair game for anyone who wants him. Alexei's face went white. Exile was worse than death in their world. But he was alive. As they dragged him away, Dante turned to me with an expression I couldn't read. "That was incredibly stupid," he said quietly. "Probably. You could have been killed. So could you." He crossed the distance between us in 2 strides, pulling me into a crushing embrace. I felt him shaking, felt the fear radiating from his body. "Don't ever do that again," he whispered against my hair. "Don't ever make me choose between my nature and you. I'll choose you every time, and it'll destroy me. Then maybe your nature needs to change." He pulled back to look at my face, and I saw it. The moment something fundamental shifted in him. The moment he decided that maybe, just maybe, I was worth the transformation. "Okay," he said simply. "Okay." 3 months later, the penthouse still had floor-to-ceiling windows and expensive art, but it felt different now. Warmer. Real plants replaced the plastic ones, filling the space with green life. My mother's laughter echoed from the kitchen, where she was teaching Dante how to make her famous empanadas, a weekly tradition that had somehow become sacred. I stood at the window, watching the city far below. So much had changed. The cameras were gone, replaced by actual trust. The cage had opened, though I'd chosen to stay inside. Dante still ran his empire, but he'd started pulling back from the worst of it, delegating, legitimizing, transforming blood money into something cleaner. It was slow work, hard work, but he was trying. For me. For us. For the future we were carefully building. Arms wrapped around me from behind, and I leaned back into Dante's warmth. "Your mother says I'm hopeless in the kitchen," he murmured against my neck. "You are hopeless in the kitchen. Good thing I have other skills." I turned in his arms, looking up at the man who'd watched me through cameras and decided to keep me. The man who'd learned to show mercy because I'd asked him to. The man who'd chosen to be better than his nature. "I love you," I said, the words still feeling new and fragile on my tongue. His eyes darkened with emotion. "Say it again. I love you, Dante Marchetti. I love you despite everything you are, and because of everything you're trying to become." He kissed me then, deep and claiming and full of promises we were both still learning to keep. When we pulled apart, I saw tears gleaming in his eyes. "I watched you through cameras because I was too broken to approach you like a normal man," he said quietly. "I trapped you because I was too possessive to risk losing you. I almost killed for you because violence was all I knew." His hands framed my face with that devastating gentleness I'd come to crave. "But you taught me a different way. You taught me that real strength isn't in control. It's in trust. That real power isn't in fear. It's in choice. That real love isn't about possession. It's about partnership." "We still have a long way to go," I reminded him. "I know." He pressed his forehead to mine, "But I'd walk through fire to get there, as long as you're beside me." From the kitchen, my mother called out that dinner was ready. Dante took my hand, lacing our fingers together, a simple gesture that still made my heart skip. As we walked toward the sound of her voice, toward the smell of home cooking and the promise of a normal evening, I realized something profound. I'd come here as a maid who sang to plants and left thank you notes. I'd been trapped by a man who watched me through cameras and thought possession was love. I'd been terrified and desperate and convinced I'd never escape. But somewhere along the way, the cage had become a choice. The monster had become a man. And I discovered that freedom wasn't about having no walls. It was about choosing which walls to keep. Dante would always be possessive, would always want me close, would always struggle with the violent instincts bred into him by his world. But he was trying. Every day he tried, and that was enough. That evening, we sat around the table. Me, Dante, and my mother. We ate empanadas and laughed at Dante's terrible cooking skills, and talked about plans for the future. It was normal and domestic, and everything I'd never thought I'd have. Later, After my mother had retired to her room in the penthouse's guest wing, Dante and I stood on the balcony, the city glittering below us like fallen stars. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked quietly. "Staying?" I thought about the question seriously. Thought about the life I'd had before, the exhaustion, the invisibility, the grinding poverty. Then I thought about what I had now: security, purpose, love that burned fierce and protective. "No," I said honestly, "but ask me again tomorrow." He laughed, pulling me close. "I'll ask you every day for the rest of our lives, and every day I'll work to deserve the answer you just gave." The wind picked up, carrying the scent of the river and the city and the life we were building together. Somewhere in the distance, sirens wailed. Somewhere below, people moved through their ordinary lives. But up here, in this moment, we were suspended between earth and sky, between what we'd been and what we were becoming. I turned in his arms to face him. This beautiful, broken man who'd installed cameras to watch his maid and found love instead. "Take me to bed," I said softly. And this time, no watching through screens. Just us. His smile was radiant. "Just us," he agreed. And as we moved inside, leaving the city lights behind, I realized that home wasn't a place or a cage or a penthouse floating above the world. Home was wherever Dante held me like I was something precious. Home was the choice we made every day to stay. Home was us.